Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeff Malinoff, and boy, these last 24 hours have been interesting. And we've had trades, we've had non-trades, we've had trades, but social media made it not so. And we've had now deadlines, and now we're at the day of someone's going to get traded, but maybe they won't be getting traded. They have limited options for that guy to be traded. We don't know what's going to happen. Anything could happen in football in the offseason. That's why we love it so much. But we're going to start with the Antonio Brown situation, then go on to the Case Keenum situation, and then we have a new trade that just happened with the Browns and Giants. We'll talk about at the end of the segments. But first things first, we got to start it off with the Antonio Brown trade that never was. As we thought, keyword thought, there was a trade that was bound to happen regarding Antonio Brown being traded to the Buffalo Bills, of all teams. And, you know, of all the teams that were predicted to make the trade to the All-Pro wide receiver, the last team that I thought was going to be a factor, or was going to be let's say a front runner for Antonio Brown, was the Buffalo Bills. And as soon as that news broke, I audibly went, "What?" Like, as in, like, is this serious? Am I being punked right now? Am I being pranked? Is this a joke? Who hacked my phone? Haha, very funny. That's what I thought. Well, not really, but it felt like it, like that. And then, of course, the NFL Instagram posted it. And so everyone's like, oh, I guess this is official. And then Antonio Brown loves to chime in on Instagram and just say the classic Donald Trump saying in fake news. And then everyone's like, okay, is this real or not? And everyone's all confused now. Even more confused than they already were. And I was just confused. I was like, when I first read that news about Buffalo, I'm like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that was going to go down. And I was right for an interesting reason, as in it was basically Antonio Brown being well, I don't want to say very vocal, but it just seemed like he was vocal enough for the Bills to say, man, he really doesn't want to play with us, does he? That's just that's the impression I got out of it, definitely. And I think a lot of people got that impression as well. It just, when it came down to it, it was more along the lines of just, oh, well, I guess that's not going to happen now. And I think the Bills are like, you know what? It's probably better off if we don't pursue this, because of the fact that if we do pursue this and we do acquire him, will he even want to play with us? I think that was a legitimate thought during this whole process, because we're all looking at one or another. We're looking at, like, if he is traded to, there was word if he was traded to the Bills, it looked like it was going to happen in the terms of, oh, he's going to pull a Le'Veon Bell and sit out. Like, I think that's what a lot of people had thought about it, because, like, it just seemed to be in a way of, like, oh, since Le'Veon did this, it seemed to be more along the lines of more of a possibility that he would sit out an entire season to avoid playing for Buffalo. And it's just not his kind of market. It's just not his kind of place. Like, you think if he wants to go anywhere, if he has a choice to say, I'm not playing here or there, which sounds to me that it's one of these instances where he doesn't contractually have a say in where he wants to be traded, but he can
Publicly, it seems to me, he said he doesn't want to play there.
I don't think he's ever said outright that he's like, I don't want to play here. I think it's more along the lines of, like, it really doesn't feel like he wants to play here. Why bother? And I think it's true. I think there is a lot to say on that. And, of course, the Buffalo Bills have said we are done pursuing him. We are going to try our market in free agency, which, of course, is easier said than done based off your market. What's the word I'm looking for? The market of the Bills in Buffalo is pretty low-key, I guess is the right word for that circumstance when you're thinking of their market. And honestly, like, does Antonio Brown, like, Antonio Brown is on Instagram recently. He was live, I think, yesterday, saying that he was in Miami or at the beach. Then he's going to go fly all the way to a place where there's no beaches and no city, well, no limelight, and it's just cold there. Nothing against the city of Buffalo. I'm sure people love actually playing in Buffalo when they're there. But on the outside looking in, it's not that great of a place to play. And, of course, you have a rookie quarterback in Josh Allen who, let's be honest, has not really proven himself. He's had some flashy games, absolutely, some positives to that. But overall, when you're looking at what he can do with Antonio Brown as one of his receivers is questionable. And I'm saying legitimately questionable, to say the least. And we honestly don't know, like, even if he did go to Buffalo, let's say he goes to Buffalo, will that team improve offensively with him being there without a really good offensive line, with an unproven quarterback, with not a good second wide receiver, that if Antonio Brown's covered a majority of the time, that can make plays on his own as well. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong in that circumstance where you think just one guy is going to pay off for you, but in reality, that's not the case. So I think it's better off for both of them, to be completely honest, that he's not going there, both teams at least. And with that being said, I think we're going into a place where the Steelers might be starting to get desperate when it comes to who they want or who they can trade for. And this seems just like a very, what's the word I'm looking for? This seems like it's going to be one of those things where they're going to rush this and trade him for pennies on the dollar and really get jibbed, if you will, out of a great deal for Antonio Brown. So if I'm another team looking for Antonio Brown, I'm going to honestly lowball the Steelers. And I'll tell you why. They said they were going to do it by today. Well, the news is they were going to do it by today. Doesn't seem to be going well. It seemed like that was for the Bills trade, in theory, in a guess at least. And with that, you also have to look at more along the lines of just what are they willing to trade now for him? Are they thinking, oh, we can still get a first round pick for him? Oh, we can get a we can get a multiple first round picks. We can get two second round picks. Like what are the options they're going to go for now? And now what are they going to do? They're going to take like a 5th round pick and a 4th round pick. Are they going to take some scrub players for them? Like what are they going to settle for in this circumstance if they're actually rushing it to get it done today? But honestly, their options are probably limited right now because a lot of teams are probably like the Buffalo Bills where they're like, yeah, we'll go for it totally. And now they're thinking, whoa, if he's continuing to do that, is this a guy we want to pursue? So there's just a lot of unanswered questions when it comes to Antonio Brown and his desire to play for certain teams. And it just seems that there's more than just unanswered questions. There's just unanswered commitment to a team, I guess you can say. There's just, I don't know, there's just so many questions. And who knows what's actually going to go down? Who knows what's actually going to, who is actually going to acquire Antonio Brown? And I'm hoping, keyword hoping, that it happens during the show so I can go, breaking news, he's been traded. But unfortunately, now that has not happened yet. I don't think it's actually going to happen. I don't think that's it's not going down that quickly. It's going to happen last minute kind of thing, if anything. If it happens today, it's going to happen like, with the luck that I have with how early I do these shows, it's going to happen as soon as I'm editing this show and putting it on iTunes and YouTube and all that stuff. It's going to happen as soon as I finish all my shows, because I do multiple shows a day. But that's just how that's just how it's going to work, isn't it? I'm just going to go, oh, okay, nothing happened. I'll see you next time. As soon as I end the episode, put it on the record. As soon as I end the episode, it's all recorded and it's all done, basically. And then, as soon as it's over, it's going to be like, Antonio Brown's been traded to the NFL Europe team that no longer exists. No, he gets traded to the Birmingham Iron in a surprise move that no one expected nor wanted. And now the AAF is officially out of business. I know obviously that is not what's going to happen. That's so far-fetched that it's not even funny. But it's to a point where I'm tired. I just want to see where he goes. It's been a while. It's kind of like the Bryce Harper thing, but not too much like the Bryce Harper thing. But they said they were going to get it done today, and hopefully it does happen today. And whoever he goes are going to make them better, regardless what team he goes to. And the question was he going to make the Bills better? In hindsight, yes, he was going to make the Bills better if he does join them. But was that going to be enough? Who knows, for a playoff run. But I think whoever goes for him now is going to be looking at, well, bottom line, they're going to be looking at a playoff run, a championship run. They're looking to compete with the elite teams and become elite themselves. or they're a team that
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com
trade that actually did happen, an official trade that actually did happen, and we'll get more on that when we return. Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Just finished up with the Antonio Brown trade. Now we move on to another trade that actually did happen. Case Keenum was signed by Broncos last season because he won because of his big 13-3 season with Minnesota, taking him to the NFC Championship game. Not getting it done in the NFC Championship game, but still was a major factor in their success that season. Now, was supposed to be the big savior for the Broncos. That did not turn out to be the case. And now, with the trade of Joe Flacco to the Broncos, we are left wondering what would the fate of Case Keenum be. Now we know, as Case Keenum has been traded to the Washington Redskins. The official trade is this. It's him and a 7th-round pick in exchange for a 6th-round pick. So it's an interesting trade, to say the least. And actually looking at Case Keenum's average passing yards versus every NFL team, we'll see how the Redskins look at when getting him. So this is Case Keenum's average passing yards versus every NFL team he's ever faced. When he plays the Patriots, he averages 272 passing yards a game. Not bad, but not great either. 271 against Buffalo. 271 against New York. So I see point zeros on this. So a lot of these teams he only played once. So I guess the one time he played New England, or it's unknown whether it was multiple times. Against the Steelers, 182.3, below average in my opinion. 175.3, even more below average. The Browns, 272.5, okay. 193.5 against the Bengals, not very good. 290 against the Texans, sure. 259 against Indianapolis, I like it. 192.7 against the Jags, 259.3 against the Chiefs, again. I like it, but I wouldn't take it to the bank. 248.5 against Los Angeles Chargers, 198 against the Raiders, 189 against the Packers, 236.5 against the Lions. And here's the worst one out of all of them have I seen so far. As I scroll down, I might get worse, but maybe not. 109.7 yards a game against the Bears. And unfortunately, he's not going to be in the same division, so he dodges a bullet there. But you know what? Let's just look at the teams he's faced in the NFC East since he's going to the Redskins. Actually, against the Redskins, he's averaged 304 yards passing a game, and against the Giants, he's averaged 291. He has never played the Eagles or the Cowboys. So we'll see how he does in the NFC East. But when it comes down to it, is a 6th-round pick worth it? Well, you're getting a 7th-round pick in exchange with Case Keenum. But you also get he has a pretty good, decent contract, so it's like something you can obviously afford. So we'll see how all that turns out. But who's getting the better quarterback in the end here between these three teams that have traded quarterbacks in the past? So we have the Ravens keeping Lamar Jackson and trading Joe Flacco to the Broncos. We have the Broncos trading for Flacco, obviously, and then exchanging Keenum to the Redskins. So now, who's better off? Case Keenum and the Redskins, Joe Flacco and the Broncos, or Lamar Jackson and the Ravens? It's really tough to say. One made the playoffs. That was the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, but he can't run 30 times a game like he was doing before he made the playoffs. That's suicide. So I'm not sure how that's going to be going down for him. And then also, you have the Broncos, who had a pretty disappointing season with Case Keenum, but a really good running back in Phillip Lindsay. So you have some positives there. But in the long run, that might not be the best suit for you because Joe Flacco, like everyone says, is he elite or not? That was like always been this debate. He's never been elite to me. It's never been a debate. He's had one Cinderella story season when he won a Super Bowl. But other than that, he hasn't really done much to impress me as a top player. And so, adding on from that to now, the Bengals, or not the Bengals. I keep getting those confused. From the Bengals the Ravens to the Bengals. There we go. No, gosh, the Ravens to the Broncos. Broncos with a B, R-O-N. Broncos, no Bengals. And with his addition to the Broncos, I don't think he makes that team any better, honestly. So with that, I think the Redskins get a decent quarterback in this instance, and I'll tell you why they get probably the better, maybe not the better deal, because honestly, I'm not impressed by any of the three of these quarterbacks because Lamar Jackson still needs to throw the ball. Joe Flacco needs to learn that age is not getting to him. And Case Keenum needs to learn that we need to find out if that 13-3 season he had was a fluke or not. So going from that to what we know to the Redskins. They had Alex Smith last year, and before Week 11, before his injury, they were 6-3. They were looking at a playoff team. They were looking pretty darn good, and they were winning games, and that's the important thing, especially in that circumstance. And with Case Keenum, who reminds me a little bit of an Alex Smith, they kind of have the same type of play style for a quarterback. So with that being said, I do know that the Redskins ended the season after the injury 7-9. They only won one game after he got injured. So it is a concern that they didn't finish well even without Alex Smith. So adding on to that, I think the important question remains, is he a good fit for the Redskins, or are the Redskins doing what they've been doing consistently through the offseason that's disappointing their fan base, thinking they won the offseason, the mythical offseason championship, and they haven't. Over and over again, they've been disappointing over and over and over again. So hopefully that curse of bad offseason moves for the Redskins ends with Case Keenum, for Case Keenum's sake. But I don't know. I mean, okay. You know what? Let's look at Case Keenum's career stats, shall we? And as I look at these, let's see. In his career QBR rating is 84.5. Not the best, but still positive. It's a B, roughly. Or maybe even a C if you want to add to that. Then he has 64 touchdowns in his career, 42 interceptions in almost 13,000 yards. This is since 2013. So, with that being said, and last year's 2018 stats, he threw for 3,800, almost 3,900 yards, 18 touchdowns, but 15 interceptions. His quarterback rating this season was 81.2. So it was, I guess, decent at best. And before he was even in Minnesota, he was a journeyman. He played for the Rams and the Texans for multiple years. He kept going back and forth from the teams. He started with Houston, then went to St. Louis. Started with Houston, went to St. Louis, and he went to Los Angeles with St. Louis. And then he went to Minnesota. And his stats in Minnesota compared to this season's, he actually had a worse year. Obviously. He had a better year passing yards-wise in Denver. But when it came to touchdowns and interceptions, it was a different story. When he was in Minnesota, he threw for 3,500 yards compared to his let's do a total. 3,547 yards compared to his 3,890 yards he had this year. So that's better. But his average was lower at 6.6 yards a throw plus, and then last year he had 7.4 yards a throw. His completion percentage in Denver was 62.3, and his completion percentage in Minnesota was the highest of his career at 67.6. But he did throw less attempts in Minnesota than he did in Denver, maybe due to the good running game and offensive line they had. But then here's where things get interesting. With Minnesota, he had his best TD interception ratio of his career. 22 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Before that, he had 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions 1 year, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception 1 year, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions another year, 9 and 6, so on and then that's it. So 22 is the most he's ever thrown in his career. 7 is not the least amount of touchdowns thrown in his career, granted, but he's never played more than 11 games before then. The most games he's played before Minnesota was 10 games with the Los Angeles Rams. Then he played 15 games with Minnesota. Then did that incredible record. Then he plays his first full entire season as a starting quarterback for a team in the Denver Broncos. He kind of weathers a little bit, but still throws 18 touchdowns, but throws 15 interceptions. So good and bad in a lot of sense of what what we should be expecting from him going as a Washington Redskin. It's an up and down situation for sure of how this is all going to go down, but that is the big trade that happened yesterday, despite the non-trade that happened with Antonio Brown. So a lot happened yesterday. There's a lot to keep track of, a lot to keep hold of, but it was just one of those things where you're looking at it like, oh, that happened, but then all this happens, you know? I mean, it just seemed to come in out of nowhere. Like, I mean, that's the beauty of all the offseason, right? You can look to like say, oh, okay, we're looking at this. Okay, this is the news that's happening right now. Then boom, something else happens, and you're like, well, I was just concentrating on this. Now I have to focus on this. It's just like your mind has to go everywhere. You have to be on your toes. And thank God for iPhones and smartphones, or else these updates would not be happening as frequently, and we wouldn't be as hectic, or there will be a lot more hectic and panic times trying to find all the news if it didn't all just happen on your phone in a couple of seconds where you get 3 different news stories. So thank God for that, right? I mean, there's just like, we would still be thinking Antonio Brown's as Bill probably right now if that was the case. But we're going to take a short break here, And when we come back, we'll be talking about another trade that happened between the Browns and the Giants, and we'll get right on that when we return.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Just finished about the two big trades that happened yesterday. Well, one big trade and one trade that didn't happen. So we're kind of in a limbo at the moment with those two. But as of right now, we have another trade. As Cleveland trades for Oliver Vernon, the Pro Bowl defensive end from the New York Giants. They got him. They didn't get Antonio Brown, but they got a great defensive player in Oliver Vernon for sure. As the Giants are sending the Pro Bowl defensive end to Cleveland in an exchange for offensive lineman Kevin Zeitler. I hope I said that right. Zeitler. I hope I said that right. And was a pretty good offensive lineman. Was a pretty good stellar player for the Browns. He wasn't amazing, but he still got the job done. So it's just a minor swap of, like, if you will, that this is in the 2019 they were picked number 132 and number 155 respectively. So they're basically exchanging a 4th and a 5th round pick. But the new Browns linebacker, Oliver Vernon, who's got traded, is due $15.5 million each of the 2 remaining years on his deal. The Browns have about $77 million in cap space to work with entering when they made the trade today. So it makes sense in the long run. But the Giants do eat $8 million in dead money from the contract Vernon has, but still saving $11.5 million. So, I mean, it does help both teams in the long run, I guess. But it seems to me that the Browns are getting another huge addition in their rushing game, in their defensive game, in Oliver Vernon, who can either play defensive end or play tight or linebacker. He's a versatile player that can do a lot of things on the field. And he's a very good addition. I think he wants to get out in New York as fast as possible because that team's not looking too good for the foreseeable future. And with it looks like there is going to be also a departure of Odell Beckham Jr., that team looks to be at the bottom of the NFC East for quite some time. And now he's on a team that could win the AFC North. Is my pick to win the AFC North at least, in the Cleveland Browns. You know, it's sometimes still weird to say they're still contenders, but in the long run, you got to be impressed with how patient they were. And they did the Cleveland Browns basically did the 76ers trust the process system, in where they kept losing, but they kept getting high draft picks, and they just loaded themselves with very young, fresh talent that can get the job done. So, do I see them making winning the division? Yes, I do. Do I see the Steelers regaining that position? No, I do not. Honestly, I think they're going downhill. I could be also wrong. You can admit me if I'm wrong. They might earn their worth back into the limelight, if you will. But when it comes down to it, New York Giants are giving up a very valuable player for not really much. And I'm not sure if this is a good technique or a bad technique in general, but we'll see how it all turns out. after that trade is the trade kind of already officially happened. They haven't really done any introductory stuff yet because of the fact we're still in not at the official end of the season or the start of the new off season. So this is all basically saying, hey, we have this all ready to go. Just be ready by Wednesday, and you'll see all the action. So next Wednesday, get your phones out and always look at your phone every 5-10 seconds because it might be the ESPN or Bleacher Report or any other news source you use as Cam comes calling and says, hey, this is a new free agent signing a new trade. Let's check him out and see who won who won the trade or got the free agent guy that everyone was looking for. So we're close to that. We are close to that part of the offseason. We're still in the midst of just waiting for more news to come about, especially for Antonio Brown and such. But this is going to be very interesting to say the least. But again, back to Oliver Vernon. He's a great defensive end / linebacker for the New York Giants, and former New York Giant. Now he's a Cleveland Brown. And I guess the question is, does this make him eligible? Does this make the Browns even more favorites, not just for the AFC North, but maybe a serious playoff contender that can make it to the Super Bowl? And that'd be the first time in their history to ever make it to the Super Bowl. They've made it to championship games in the past, but that was before the Super Bowl era. So they have not witnessed the Super Bowl firsthand, any Cleveland Browns team. So we might witness a first, though. There's always a first for everything, so why not Cleveland being in the running this year? I honestly just love how this free agency and trade area and the offseason is just happening so quickly. Because one way you look, there's a free agent, everyone's going for him, busting down his walls to get him, and then there's a guy in your living room saying, let me play for you, and you go, whoa, slow down, buddy, you haven't played in a couple years, you just retired, and they go, oh, I can still play, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just using like NBA 2K as a random example, but I'm just saying in the long run that so much happens before even the trades are allowed to happen and the free agency is even allowed to happen. And I know that's not against the rules or anything. I think it depends on the contract, right? But when it comes down to it, you might be able to get your guy that you've been looking for, and in the free agent market, and then drafting, you get your guy there, and then trading, you can help get other. It's just there's a lot of other different aspects than just how the beginning is working with all the trades, because it's how you improve your team with these trades, improve your team with these new offensive weapons you got or defensive weapons you got, and go from there. And that's basically what the off seasons are all about, especially in the NFL, the unpredictability. And with that, one more thing to go before we take a little break. The Jags cut defensive tackle Malik Jackson. It's only been 3 years since he signed his extension of an absurd amount, since being cut doesn't help that. 6-year, $85 million deal. 3 years into it, he gets cut. That's pretty disappointing for both parties, both the player and the franchise that paid him all that money just to be cut after 3 seasons. And with that being said, there's one more thing I want to discuss. And, I mean, you can have your own opinions on this. I'm just going to voice my opinion. There is a player on the Cowboys by the name of David Irving who quits the NFL while possibly smoking marijuana on his live Instagram feed. And he says he's quitting to protest the anti-drug or the anti-marijuana policy rule that the NFL has. And so he's saying, well, I'm just going to do this, so I quit until you basically, I think he's doing this until you change it or something of that nature, but I'm not sure. He might be gone for good, but does weed consume someone that badly? I understand that people enjoy smoking it, and I know it's like not really illegal anymore because there's so many different states that approve of it for the right purposes, I guess, and the right distribution. But seeing a player saying, I'm not going to play until I'm allowed to smoke weed, doesn't really bode well for the future, because I have to say this. What if he's like high during the game? That can only hurt his team, not benefit his team. But that's just how I see it, at least. But overall, that should be our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. And please tune us in next week as we have more info on Antonio Brown's trade and maybe even Case Keenum's condition and all these other things. And maybe even some surprise free agent meetings with some certain players. So we'll get right on that when we come back next week. Thank you so much for joining us, and once again, I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.